Let's talk March plans. It's my partner's birthday tomorrow. I'm gonna go on a little bit of a trek today to see if I can find a physical copy of A Gentleman in Moscow, which I own. I'm pretty sure. I bought it, I read it for a book club a few years ago. My partner and I recently watched that adaptation, and my partner is now really interested in reading the book, so I want to get it for him for his birthday, because I told him the whole time we were watching it that he could read mine afterwards, and it's not on my shelves. I don't know where it is, so I'm gonna see if I can get him a copy. Books that I'm planning on reading. Well, let me tell you what I currently have open. So I'm carrying over Painted Devils by Margaret Owen from February, and this is a reread for me because Holy Terrors is coming out in April, the third and final book in this trilogy. I'm really excited. So I am currently into Painted Devils. I'm about 75% of the way into it. I'm listening to this as an audiobook, which is actually really great. I am also in the middle of The Endless War, which is one of my priority reads. It's a 25 book to read in 2025. This is a sequel that I really wanted to get to. And I'm about 80% of the way into this, and my library, like, you only have it so long kind of date is rapidly approaching. So that's what I have on the go. And actually I have already finished a book, and that was Exit Strategy by Martha Wells. So I got my Everend subscription, was like back up. I was on pause for 12 weeks or so, and it was available again at the end of February. It was starting up again at the end of February. So I picked up the next book in the Murderbot Diaries series, and I really enjoyed it overall. This is a series we're following an AI unit who is like partial organic material and partial synthetic material, who refers to themselves as Murderbot, and they have hacked their governor module, with a thing that sort of like enforces it to follow through with what it's been told, what it's been ordered to do. And it is a security bot unit, so it like works for a company that rents it out essentially for various like security detail for things. And this is the 4th novella in the series, so I can't say too much about where we are, but overall the things that I'm really loving about these novellas is just the way that we get to see Murderbot explore who they are, explore what they want, and interact with other artificial beings and other humans in more profound ways than they have previously been able to, that is sort of starting to change their opinion on the extent to which they want to interact with other beings. Murderbot is also like, Poppy dropped something. Murderbot is also really into watching their like serials or TV series and shows, and I find Murderbot really relatable in a lot of things, in the way that they like have to veg out and watch these series when they're like dealing with a lot of stress. They have a lot of stress and anxiety. And this novella was particularly great because there were some familiar side characters that we got to reacquaint with in this one, and it was just it was really great to see all of that. I love where we wound up. Where we wound up is where I thought we were winding up at the end of the first novella, and then it took a little detour on me. However, I will acknowledge that the journey of that detour that we took from where that like first novella to where the 4th novella ended, Murderbot is now in a better place and much more prepared to like be at this stage in the journey. And I absolutely love that I could like see that arc and that it actually happened the way that it should have. So I'm really, really enjoying it. I will admit that all of the tech talk in these books just goes right over my head when I'm listening to the audiobooks, which I really do love. I just feel like the technology just like kind of like in one ear and out the other, and I'm like listening to like catch to see like what's the end result of what all of this means. I am getting excited but also nervous about the adaptation because I don't know if Alexander Skarsgård, or Skarsgård is how I would imagine it's pronounced in Swedish, but I don't know if he has the right vibe. Like aesthetically, sure, I can see how we got there for Murderbot, but I don't know if Alexander Skarsgård is the right vibe for Murderbot's internal dialogue. I'm not sure. I don't know that I would have made that pick. And especially on that note with the internal dialogue, I feel like adaptations for books where it's the internal dialogue of the character that is the distinctive feature of that book don't work as adaptations, especially if they don't have the character like narrating in the TV show. So if there is no like narration by Murderbot in the adaptation, I don't think it will work. Like that would be my guess, because the rest of the story is fine, but it's the way that Murderbot is reacting in their head and their humor and the way that they phrase things, like that is the genius of this series. That's what makes it, it's not cozy, but that's what makes it like relatable, and that's what like gets you in the feels, is the internal dialogue. So if it's just like the plot and the external dialogue, then I would be really nervous about the adaptation. But I did tell my partner, like when I finished this, I was like really excited, and I told him how I finished it and that this TV series is coming out, and he said, quote, "That sounds like a really interesting setup." So I'm gonna see if I can get him to listen to the audiobook for All Systems Red, the first one. Wish me luck there. That would be really, really fun. I am also reading a book for a project vlog. That's my romantasy project vlog that you're going to be seeing before you see this. So I will link it in the cards above in the description box down below. And it is romantasy books that I am skeptical about. I've read 2 of the 3 so far, and I'm on the 3rd book for that vlog. But after I finish Painted Devils, I also have to reread the Fallow Year, all of the short stories in this Little Thieves series, so that I can do that recap video as well. So I will be reading a collection of short stories, and I'm sure that I'm going to keep on with Murderbot at some point here. I'm just not certain on when. So that's where we are at the beginning of March. I got to finish up the Painted Devils. I got to read the Fallow Year to do that recap video. I got a couple romantasy books on the go, The Endless War and the one that is for my project vlog, and then we'll see where the rest of the month takes me. Okay, so I'm just finishing up work. It is the 18th, 19th actually, and I have a couple DNFs. One of them accidental, it's not forever, and one of them I think is just kind of an ambivalent DNF that I feel a little bit bad about. I am going to DNF the Stardust Grail. I picked this up finally. I have been postponing it forever, and I finally picked it up. It was an audiobook that I had available to me. It was a video TBR book. So this was one of the 2024 new releases that I still want to get to. I quite enjoyed The Deep Sky by this author, and I really wanted to get to this. I liked the idea of like an art thief getting pulled back in for like one last job, but I just generally feel really ambivalent about the book as I'm listening to it. It's not the type of thematic project that really like is something that drives my reading. Like this is, while I appreciate it, it's not what I'm in the mood for right now. And so this is a really, really thematic work. The plot isn't really doing anything for me. And so I just feel kind of a little bit bored and ambivalent about the whole situation, because like every time that I'm reading it, because it's just not something that I'm in the mood for. It's not the thematic type of work that really, really drives me in my reading. And so I absolutely could keep listening to this and finish it out. I just feel like I'm putting in time, and that's not how I want to feel with my reading at large. So I think it's just a better idea to move on to other things that make me a little bit more excited. So that's the first one that I am DNFing for this month. The other one is accidentally The Endless War. This is not forever, because this is one of my priority reads for the year. And what happened was the library copy got taken away from me. I saw it coming. It was like, you have 3 days, you have 2 days, you have 1 day, you have 6 hours. And I was like, this is not gonna happen. So it didn't, and it got taken away from me. And it's actually quite an extensive hold at the library for it to finish it. So that is not a 25 book for this year that I'm going to be able to check off anytime soon. So that is a little bit distressing. So, and to have to like wait long to finish a book that I'm feeling like kind of mad about. And I also can't progress further in this series until I read on. So yeah, just feeling, I'm a little bit mad about myself that I let that happen. But since I last checked in with you, I've actually done 2 rereads, which is kind of crazy. So I finished my reread of Painted Devils, and that was really great, but it was really, really interesting reading Little Thieves and Painted Devils so close back to back. And this reminds me that when Painted Devils was first announced, I remember thinking like, did Little Thieves really need a sequel? Like, sure, we're not like, and they lived happily ever in terms of the relationship, like that wasn't concluded, but we were, there was implications that they would be together or that they would have a certain vibe. But the story itself was complete, and that is very clear when you pick up Painted Devils, because it feels, and continue on reading the short stories, it really, really feels more like we're just continuing the character journey for Vanya. The story is done, but the story that we're getting in Painted Devils, or like Little Thieves' story, is done. The story that we're getting in Painted Devils is very different. And it is a lot of it. There are side stories and side elements to that story, or like to that book, that are very clearly introducing characters and concepts and complications that are going to be, I think, relevant plot for book 3. So while Little Thieves feels like distinctly separate and its own, it starts the character journey for Vanya and for Emmerich to some extent, but it starts that off, but the story is separate, whereas Painted Devils very clearly feels like the beginning of something new and different. Not new and different, it's a different storyline. Plot is a lot more intricate and involved in Painted Devils than it was in Little Thieves, but I did really, really enjoy just like Vanya and Emmerich being on page together and working through their stuff. The ending for Painted Devils is just really, really frustrating and emotionally wrecking, and I went right into reading the collection of short stories, the Fallow Year, and the very first short story is Emmerich's POV from like the morning after of the events, like of how book 2 ends. And we jump right into Emmerich's perspective in the short story. It's just absolutely devastating. I actually was like just texting with Taylor. She's just now reading the short stories for the first time. She was like, oh my God, that first short story is rough for poor Emmerich. And I think I said in some video at some point that we get Emmerich's perspective in Painted Devils, and I was very, very wrong. We don't get his perspective until the short stories. So that's my bad. And actually now I'm curious if we'll have his perspective in Holy Terrors. What will I do if we don't have his perspective? I think we have to. I don't know anything about the plot for Holy Terrors, but I can't go from now having insight into Emmerich's thoughts and feelings to not having it in Holy Terrors. Now I'm curious, oh my God. The other thing that I reread was very spontaneous, and that was All Systems Red, the first book in Murderbot. So what happened was, when I was talking to my partner about this show, this adaptation that's going to be happening, and I was all like on the high from having just finished Exit Strategy, I think I just like one evening before bed, I like pulled out the audiobook and was like, hey, do you want to give this a listen? And He thinks that audiobooks don't work well for him, but I think his only experience of audiobooks is the time that we tried to listen to Never Let Me Go or Never Let Me Die. Kazuro Ishiguro one, and it was like really disturbing, and he like couldn't handle it, the audiobook experience. So I think that that's his only audiobook experience. But anyway, so we wound up successfully listening to All Systems Red together, and it was so perfect and timely because it was a good refresher on these characters from book one with where I am now in the series. It was really great to get a refresher on names and people and faces and how they interact, and it was just like really nice to like watch it, like to watch it through the eyes of my partner a little bit too, like to see him react to certain things of like Murderbot's personality. And then like also I wasn't as in love with Murderbot in the first book as I am now, and so it was really nice to also have that like that looking back comparison. So really random. I am going to count it because it's been more than a year is typically how I count rereads. I only count it as a book this year if it has been over 12 months since I previously read it. So if I read something twice within a 12-month span, I don't count it. I used to do that a lot more. I don't really do that as much anymore. I have also finished another book for my Romantasy project vlogs, which should already be up. So that was Quicksilver by Kelly Hart. I have also finished this month. And I mean, you should check out that video, that project vlog, to see how that went. I read Quicksilver, To Poison a King, and Heartless Hunter. If you want to hear what I thought about any of those books, you can check out that project vlog. But it was actually kind of nice to do it. And I'll definitely be trying to do more Romantasy specific project vlogs, but more project vlogs in general. I still have the one that I started in January on the go. Actually, that's a good reminder. I need to make some progress with the other books that I'm doing for that project. So yeah, 2 DNFs, 2 rereads, and 1 project read. Not very exciting update, but lots of progress and lots of movement. And I have 3 things to update you on. So I definitely have been doing less check-ins this month overall, like not after every single book. And I don't know, just a matter of, I guess, being busy and not always having the time to sit down and check in. I have been picking up a crazy amount of morning shifts because they allow me to both work a lot and contribute financially to my family, but also then spend evenings with my daughter. And here we have it, 3 things to check in on, as I was saying. First of which is The Fallow Year by Margaret Owen, a collection of short stories that take place in the intervening time between books 2 and 3 in the Little Thieves trilogy. Holy Terrors is coming out so soon. I have to sit down and film that recap, but I have to like sit down and jot my notes for it. Don't let me touch my hair. But The Fallow Year was an interesting experience reading it all the way through. So there are 10 short stories, and from both Vanya and Emmerich's perspectives. And I have up until like rereading it all the way through, I had read the first 8 of them. And so then not only was it great to like finish it, but also to like read it through all in one go, sort of like over the span of a few days. And it was a very different experience because when they were coming out like slowly one at a time, there was like time had passed in between the short stories for both them and for me, so you're like heavily anticipating it, whereas reading it all the way through, it definitely like goes through the time period and you feel like the growth and the change that they're going through and the working through like the events of the ending of Painted Devils goes a little bit more quickly, but again, it's because time is passing. But I think essentially like what I'm getting out of, or what I got out of The Fallow Year, was having the opportunity to work through some of the feelings and to like see our main characters work through the feelings after the events of Painted Devils, into assuming like, because we're doing a bit of a time jump into like book 3, we still, as the reader, like get to see that growth and like what happens in that intervening year, so that the jump from Painted Devils to Holy Terrors, and I'm saying this having not read Holy Terrors, I'm just assuming based on where the Fallow Year ends up, like where they are emotionally, how they have like worked through and processed some of the things, like it would be kind of jarring and almost traumatic to pick up Holy Terrors with how things are left in the Fallow Year, like as they are going to be. So I actually really appreciate, as a reader, like getting that intervening time. And as well, like we definitely kind of set up how they got to the place in terms of like where they're going to be in their respective careers, let's say. I then finished Out on a Limb. How did I get there? I was listening to this other audiobook that I'm also going to fill you in on, but I just like wasn't always feeling it. And I had a day where I needed something different. So what I was doing was scrolling through the available now in a crunch, and I scrolled across this cover, which was recognizable to me because somebody that I follow, like a channel that I watch, had read it and said positive things, like, and enough so that I like took note of the cover. And actually, when I looked back on Goodreads, I had identified it as a book that I like wanted to read. So it's not so random, but it wasn't very intentional. And this is a contemporary romance. It is a surprise romance or surprise pregnancy one-night stand situation, which the author actually really appreciated. The author was like, this isn't everybody's trope. So this is an own voices disability representation where the author, or where our main character, has a small hand, but it is a random birth defect that can happen. So she has a smaller hand that I think possibly fewer fingers, but I'm not certain about that. And then our love interest, our hero, this is single POV, but our hero as well is an amputee. I think there are too many third act conflict surprise pregnancies that I could do without, but I don't mind if that's where we're starting from. But as a romance book, there was no conflict in this book, so that made it a little bit like, it was a totally fine reading experience, and there were so many things that I appreciated about it, but it was just like two people like really working through their stuff in a very supportive and amazing way. And I have said very similar things about books in the past and been like, this was amazing because of these things, and this time I was just like, it was a little bit boring for my personal mood right in this moment. But overall, a great disability representation book. And if you don't mind one night stand pregnancy, or if you would like to read a very good, healthy communication, understanding, respectful situation with very little conflict or drama that involves a one night stand surprise pregnancy that has the audacity to also have a discussion about, is she going to keep the pregnancy at the beginning, then this is a book for you. And if none of those things are like, yeah, then maybe it's not. And then I finished, because I was reading this the whole time, but then I finished The Blood of the Chosen by Django Wexler. And this is the second book in the Silvereye and Burningblade, or Burningblade and Silvereye, not important, series. This is a priority read for me. This was one of my 25 books to read in 2025. This is a sequel that I wanted to get to. I read the first book, Ashes of the Sun, a couple of years ago, and have been putting off reading the sequel ever since. It's a sci-fantasy book that is inspired by Star Wars. Like, it is inspired by Star Wars. The main, I think, inspiration generally is that we have like separated siblings, and the magic system is very Force in nature. This series is about two siblings who are separated when they're quite young, Geyer and Maya. Geyer is the older brother, and when Maya is about 4 or 5, she is taken away by the Order, which is like this, a group of people who are able to, like, who have the Force. It's diet, but it's the Force, who are able to like touch this magic power, and they kind of like govern and police the world. They protect everyone from these like plague-spawn monsters that are around. So she's taken away by this Order because she has this ability. Geyer grows up with like the dissolution of his family. Everything goes crap from there. Geyer grows up hating the Order, hating these centaurs and the power that they have over humanity, and with like a little bit of a personal vendetta as well. Maya, on the other hand, grows up within the Order, drinking the Kool-Aid, etc. And what I really appreciate about the conversations that we have in this story is that there is no really good, clear resolution. Definitely, like in the first book, it was one where I had different expectations. Everybody was loving it at the time. So it wasn't as like political. It wasn't as revenge. It wasn't as siblings. Like it wasn't any of those things that people use to describe this book. So I think my expectations were off in that one. But despite all of those things, like despite it being not as significant in like the keywords that people tend to describe this series with, because they are like technically accurate, I just was able to appreciate then the nuance of the discussion of like Maya and Geyer then are on like different sides of this situation. They both have strong feelings about what is right and what should be done, and they just have different views about how to get there and what that end result should be. And both of them want good things for humanity and etc., etc., etc. But they obviously both have different like biases from what they've been exposed to and how they've grown up. And so I actually think that is good, that we are seeing that there is no like one clear easy solution here, and that really like any overarching power, any, let's say, governmental organization like can be not great. Yeah, so I like that we don't have all the information, and I like that we don't have a clear this is the right thing to do. But despite that, I feel like most of the book, when I'm reading it, I feel fairly ambivalent about everything overall. Like they're not personally very, very riveting to me. I find Geyer and Maya a teensy bit annoying, each of them, to be personally honest. But then, I think both in the last book and in this one, it has such intense, engaging, explosive endings that it makes me get really excited about it. So even though I spend like a fairly significant percentage of the book being like fairly ambivalent and just kind of taking away at it, I then get like really, really swept up in reveals and in drama and excitement towards the end. So yeah, I genuinely don't know if I will continue on in this series. It feels so silly to get 2 books into a trilogy and then be like, meh, about the third one. Like, no, I won't finish it. Like, that feels like a waste of time, but then so would reading a third book that you feel ambivalent about. And again, the ending just kind of got me. Like, I actually really liked the reveals. I thought the reveal at the end was very exciting and really interesting and actually, like, really shook up the information and what could potentially happen moving forward from here. So, to be determined on that one. I don't think I'm going to... maybe I almost should pick it up immediately and then just, like, complete the series. And then it's done, you know? Like, that's... And then I don't have to have this thought process again in like 6 months or in 12 months or in 18 months, you know? Like, I don't have to rethink and redecide. If I just like did it now, then I would do it and it would be done, and I would have taken a series off of my list, and I would have the experience that I had. That's an interesting thought. Have you read this series? Let me know. Let me know what you think about it. It's not everything that I think a lot of people say about it. Like, I don't think this is overly hyped by any means. The people that I see talking about it are like, I wish this was more hyped and more people knew about this and were talking about it. And I would generally say it's probably a really great book for a lot of people. It's not my personal preference taste-wise. It's not perfect for that, but damn, it's got exciting endings. I have to report a travesty that occurred early this year, late last year, in regards to my favorites list of 2024. And that is that Strange the Dreamer somehow did not appear on that list. I read it in the first quarter of the year when I wasn't recording my stats and I wasn't using StoryGraph in quite the same way. So then when I went through things and I did like my top rated books at the end of the year, it just slipped through because I didn't rate it on StoryGraph. And what brought this to my attention, which it has occasionally come up, I will admit, like I have occasionally thought about it, but what really, really highlighted and emphasized so much to me that this is an error that occurred is that I just finished reading Muse of Nightmares. It's the last book that I read for March. It's the 31st today. And oh my God, those books are so good. They're so freaking good. When I first started watching BookTube, people still occasionally brought them up. But honestly, nobody talks about them anymore, I feel like.
that's not true. Occasionally. But not nearly to the extent that those books deserve. I'm sure that they've had their time in the sun. But wow, those are so good. Muse of Nightmares was the sequel and conclusion to the Strange the Dreamer duology. I read Strange the Dreamer last year. It was one of my priority reads last year. It was a TBR vet for my 24 books in 2024. And Muse of Nightmares was a sequel that I wanted to read in my 25 books to read in 2025. And I just wanted to make sure that I included it on my priorities because I have been putting Muse of Nightmares off because Strange the Dreamer ended in a really, really shocking and slightly devastating place that I was really nervous about how it would go. So just that I knew it would be painful, and so I wanted to keep myself accountable to finishing this duology. Strange the Dreamer, if you are unfamiliar with that book, or if you just need a little refresher, is a book we were following Laszlo Strange amongst other perspectives, but Laszlo is definitely our main perspective, and he is obsessed with the city of Weep. And it actually used to have a different name, but nobody remembers it, and a lot of people with where he lives kind of even almost don't believe that Weep existed, or it's sort of like this fabled city that doesn't exist anymore, that doesn't interact with the outside world. They haven't heard from it in centuries. And at a certain point, a group arrives from the city of Weep to collect scholars and academics who they think could help them solve a particular problem that the city has. And Laszlo manages to convince them to take him along with them. And one of the really interesting and I think profoundly effective things about Muse of Nightmares in particular is that we are reading a story where the bad guy, the villain, the most significant villain is no longer around. Actually, it's a problem that was already kind of solved or gotten rid of before the first book even started. And so what we're dealing with instead then is just two kind of separate groups of individuals who have been impacted by that past villainous situation. That's really, really simplify things, but that past villainous situation has impacted both of our groups of people, but because of the way in which they were impacted, they are kind of antagonistic towards each other. And it was really kind of powerful reading this book about, powerful and devastating, reading this book where you don't really want either of the sides to fail. You feel inherently, you feel deeply for everybody involved in this situation. And it's so beautifully bittersweet and painful. I kind of put this book on par with A Song for Arbonne in terms of beautiful pain and devastatingly bittersweet moments. They are very different both in vibe and tone even and plot and all of the things, but for some reason they're both devastatingly beautiful and painful. This author, Laini Taylor, has somehow managed to do impeccable character work and characterization and growth over the course of a duology, over the course of 2 books, with several of the characters that we get this growth and journey with being just side characters whose perspectives we get only briefly here and there. So it's that much even more, it's even that much more impressive that then I feel like I understand those characters so inherently and get to watch the growth that takes place. I'm looking at you, nobleman guy, whose name I forget. I lost the track of my sentence there, but it was truly impeccable writing in what Laini Taylor was able to do with the characters in the span of 2 books. And additionally, they introduced a couple characters in the second book in a separate storyline, an almost backstory storyline. And not only was the author able to give that separate storyline complete justice in and of itself, and the characters involved there to make you feel for those characters and the background, as well as how it incorporated and tied into our main storyline, was honestly insanely impressive. Very, very impressive. There was a much more hopeful tone to the ending than I was expecting, considering where we left off at the end of the first book, considering the tone. Despite all of that, over the course of the book, we actually wound up in a place that I feel just like really resolved about. Like not a book where like, sure, I would take more in that world. I would take more stories from these characters. Absolutely. But I also feel just like really, really at peace with where their stories left off. But just there's a relationship in this series that I think is a new one true pairing for me. And yeah, that's how I feel about that. There was even like, I had a feeling, I had an inkling, if you know, you know, I'm just gonna say like a grandma situation. There was a grandma situation that was like, I kind of hope that like, it would be really cool if this grandma situation, like if this grandparent were to do blank, and then they did that, and it was so perfect. Ah, that was an amazingly beautiful series. Will be acquiring those books at some point in the future. It's not like top goal, top priority to acquire those books because I can always take them out from my library and reread them. But like, yeah, wow. I would really, really like to read more by Laini Taylor. I just don't have any interest in reading Daughter of Smoke and Bone. You could do a hard pitch for me if you think that's the wrong choice. But if I'm gonna look this up, obviously. But if you have like other strong Laini Taylor recommendations. Did they also write Starless Sea, or was that Shannon? Samantha Shannon. I had to look at my priority book. Was that Samantha Shannon or Laini Taylor that wrote The Starless Sea? So that is it for March overall. So let's go through like sort of like recapping what I managed to get through. I'm not going to relist all the books here, but just in terms of like some priorities and goals for the year. As I said, Muse of Nightmares was one of my 25 books to read in 2025. I also read Blood of the Chosen this month, which was again another sequel in my 25 books to read in 2025. So that brings my total, I'm pretty sure, to 7 out of 25 books for the year. That actually puts me perfectly on track to continue to read only 2 books a month from here on out. So I'm up 1, which is how 25 divided by 12. I'm up 1 book. So that's perfect. Great place to be. I feel a lot better about it. I thought I was getting behind because I am on track at each quarter of the year now. I'm going to like assess like, if I'm on track, I'm going to let myself buy a book. Most likely I'm going to be purchasing books that are books on my 25 books to read in 2025 that I might struggle to get a copy or get access to in other ways. So 7 out of 25, that's where we're at for the priorities, and I will put up my like update color-coded chart for you so you can see where I am at. In terms of, before I move on, then I also read one more book this month that was a video TBR book. So books that I claim in videos I'm going to read. And therefore I like to, it's a new strategy for me to actually follow up and keep account, keep record of this. So I also read Quicksilver by Callie Hart this month. You didn't get to hear about it here because I did it as part of a romantasy project, romantasy books that I am skeptical about. I read that and 2 other books, the other 2 in February, and you should be able to have access to that project vlog. I will link it up above and in the description down below if you want to check out my thoughts on Quicksilver, but that was a Kindle Unlimited TBR book. From there, the books that I'm currently reading, I have 2 on the go right now. Audiobook, I am listening to Before They Are Hanged by Joe Abercrombie, the second book in the First Law trilogy. This is a series that I'm doing a reaction and recap videos, vlog style videos for while I am reading them. So I do have obviously the video up already for the Blade itself, and I read that late last year. And I'm fortunately reading Before They Are Hanged right now. I'm about 50% of the way in and really enjoying it. So that is really, really nice to get access to this. And the audiobook is obviously amazing as always. And then I am reading physically, or I have an ebook for The Memory Hunters, which is an e-arc. So an advanced reader's copy available to me from NetGalley, and I think it's like Kensington Books or something is the publisher on that one, by Mia Tsai, which is one of my anticipated releases for this year. It is on 2 priority lists. It is on my 25 books to read in 2025 as an anticipated release, and it is also on the anticipated releases video that I made, 5 books I want to read from this year and 5 books I want to read from last year, for new releases for last year. Doing well with priorities overall, and I'm about 30, maybe 30% of the way into that book. It doesn't come out until June or July, but I'd love to get a review out well before then. So yeah, there we all have it for March. Let me know something that you read in March and really, really liked. Let me know about Laini Taylor and Daughter of Smoke and Bone if I'm like super missing out on that one. And I will see you guys next time. Have a great day. Bye.